They expect you to stay quiet, to swallow hidden fees, put up with faulty products, and accept poor service as just the way it is. But you can demand better. Stand up, speak up, because with Which on your side, you can say no to bad business, buy with confidence, and get the service you deserve. Which, the power in you. Find out more at which.co.uk.
It's tax season again, and this is everything you need to know ahead of next week's self-assessment deadline and the wider changes to tax happening this year. Welcome to Which Money. Hello, it's James Rowe, not in the Which studio this week, but at home, and with me, or at least from their home anyway, we've got Which Money journalist Ruby Flanagan. Ruby, it's your first time on the podcast. How are you?
Yeah, all good. I'm ready for this.
Yes, indeed. Glad to have you here. And alongside you is stalwart of the podcast and still, I believe, savings journalist of the year, Matthew Jenkin. Matthew, hello.
Hi. I got that title just for like a few more months, you know, so...
The pressure's going to be on to see if you can keep it for another year. We'll keep an eye on it.
I'll try.
Should we cover off the basics of self-assessment first? Ruby, when's the deadline? What's it for and who's it for? Do you want to just cover off the basics?
Self-assessment deadline is January the 31st at 23:59. So a minute before midnight on the 31st, and this year that falls on a Saturday. So you've got to get all your self-assessment returns, bits and bobs in for then. So this is all for sort of self-employed individuals. This is for landlords, partners in businesses. Really, it's just for people who are not taxed sort of through their wages or pensions. So it's kind of, if you don't get taxed through PAYE or through your wages, then you'll have to do a self-assessment.
Yeah, the big thing there is if you don't get a pay slip from an employer, I guess that is a big signal to suggest that you need to be doing this before next Saturday. Have either of you done a self-assessment tax return before? I've had to do them before, and I know it's kind of like the bane of my life. Have either of you two had to go through it?
Yeah, I have. I used to be a freelancer, so unfortunately, yes, I have done it I did it for a few years actually. But it is pretty complicated stuff.
I have also freelanced. Yes, I've also cried about my self-assessment multiple years. I've lost big important documents, invoices. It was my core memory is being sat on my brother's living room floor, and he was like, "Okay, have you got your receipts?" And I'm like holding them, these scrunched up receipts. Like, yeah, they're all here. It's like, it's fine. And this was like 2 days before deadline. And I just remember being so overwhelmed by it. I was also in my early 20s, beginning freelancing and just not having a clue how to do anything.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one thing people never sort of warn you about is the sort of pain that is, or the pain that can be. Tax returns doesn't have to be a pain if you know what you're doing. But it's one of those things that you have to really sort of learn fast. And for example, like expenses, I never even realized I could, file expenses. I didn't have a single receipt either. I was like, oh, well, hang on, I could be actually saving some money here. So there's all sorts of things that can just catch you out. It's not just about, tossing up those numbers.
On expenses, one year, I think it was 2021, 2022 tax year. So I was a freelance journalist and I was meeting people for coffee all the time. And I heard that I could expense coffee. I tried to expense like 50 coffees over that tax year, all of which got rejected. No, none of them got through, by the way. So I wrote a piece recently and it was about self-assessment, and I had an expenses bit section on it. And I was like, really like, just because if you get your client a coffee, doesn't mean you can expense it. There's like very specific rules about it that, it's a HMRC was like, no way, like 50 quid worth of coffee. God, no. So I didn't get to cut my tax bill. I thought I would be so clever. That was not the case. So there are like intricate details about everything that you do need to be aware of. Or you get like sort of like, what is it, muck on your face or something. Like I was like, what do you mean? these are business expenses. They're not. They're hospitality, they're entertainment. So they're not business expenses. Don't do me.
That's the thing, isn't it? There's just so many nuances to it. And I guess one of the big things, and we don't want to scaremonger, I think this is just more about the education side of things, is that there are penalties if you don't get this done on time, either submitting it on time or actually paying your bill on time. So 31st of January is the deadline to submit the tax return, but to also pay any of the money that you owe. And there are big penalties that could come if you don't hit either of those deadlines, aren't there?
The main one is your filing deadline. So that's £100, and that's a late filing deadline, and that's automatic. So if you do not file on time by 23:59, then you'll be fined £100 immediately. I have faced £100 fine. I paid my £100 fine because I did not have a reasonable excuse, and that's something that you can really easily avoid by just getting it done on time. It's a really easy one to not get. And that's just the filing one. There's ones for late payment in tax, but your main one that you want to try to avoid, because it's so easy to, is that filing deadline is just file on time.
Yeah, and it increases over time as well. So the longer, the later you leave it, the more the penalty will increase by, and that goes for sort of not paying as well. So they not only do they whack interest on top, there's also penalties as well. So it's better just make sure you're getting everything in on time, and you'll have no problems. But I think Ruby also mentioned about reasonable excuses. So there are which is a good point, because there are genuine reasons why you might not be able to file or pay on time. I was just having a quick look at the HMRC website, and for example, somebody has died, partner or close relatives died, unexpected stay in hospital, serious or life-threatening illness, even your computer or software failed while you're actually preparing your online return. So there's loads of good reasons for not doing it, but yeah, I mean, where possible, get it in on time, so you're not having to sort of plead to the tax office.
Yeah, some of those fees really add up. I was just having a look there, and it's 100, as you mentioned there, Ruby. It's £100 automatically, and then up to 3 months, you get charged £10 a day extra, and that's every single day for potentially up to 90 days, and then after that, it goes up to £300 or even 5% of the tax due, whichever is higher. So that it could add up to an extortionate amount. But I guess what it comes down to is just sort of being on top of everything. And we've all been freelance, clearly. We've mentioned that. And I bet you got the same amount of letters and text messages and emails from HMRC as I did to say, don't forget the deadline, don't forget the deadline. Like, we are notified enough. Like, a lot of the onus is then on us to actually follow through and get it all done, isn't it?
Yeah, there's something I wanted to bring up this year, simply because the deadline falls on a Saturday. And when you're paying your HMRC bill, there's a multiple ways you can pay, so through check, online banking, just all that sort of jazz. Because it falls on a Saturday this year, my piece of advice is just simply, because each of the payments that you do can take potentially a different amount of time, sort of like that HMRC can get them. So there's some that are like that day, the next day, sort of those are like your online banking, quite the basic ones. But there's like a few others that can take potentially 3 to 5 days that the money will get to them. So if you are filing this year and paying it, try and do it on Friday, just to sort of give you that bit of extra time, because there's sort of things are like, it's like faster payments, direct debit and things that can just take a little bit longer, because they've got to have your money by that time. It's not just, I've sent the money. It's like, no, we've received it by this deadline. So just take caveat that the final working day is Friday. Sometimes things are a little slow. Like if you do it on Saturday morning, the payment might not actually be processed yet. So it's not like a guarantee like, the deadline's now Friday. It's just sometimes some payments can take a little bit longer than others to get through. And HMRC needs that to have it submitted completely. You don't want to just risk. You could have paid it all in advance and it just be that payment didn't go through before the deadline. You don't want to risk anything like that. It's not like the deadline's changed. It's just be aware that some payments take longer than others to complete.
Especially if you're not going to do a simple bank transfer. If you want to pay, if you want to send in a check, for example, I mean, some people still do prefer that. That's obviously going to take a few days to arrive. So leaving everything to the last minute isn't really advisable.
And given we are sort of a week away from the deadline, I imagine there are still a lot of people who have left it to the last minute. We've all been there. I do wonder if there's some stats lying around about what days people most likely submit theirs. I wonder if there's I wonder if the most popular day is like the day of or the day before. We might have to try and dig those figures out at some point. Can we do something on correcting your tax return? Because I imagine, filling it in, you can sort of stumble over some of the questions, and getting the numbers correct everywhere you have to fill in the numbers. If you do sort of realise you have made a mistake before or even after the deadline, is that an issue? Can you sort of rectify that at all?
Yeah, I mean, there is a bit of a myth, I suppose, that, when you file your tax return, everything has to be 100% accurate. I mean, with just a week away, if you're struggling to really get on top of everything and you're not 100, you haven't got all the figures to hand just yet, HMRC does actually allow you to file, including by using estimations. So instead of missing the deadline, you can estimate the costs, and then you can actually then amend your tax return after you filed. I believe you have up to like 12 months in order to file your tax return. However, I mean, they will impose a fine for some mistakes. For example, if they think you've been very careless or you've deliberately tried to, underpay tax. But in other cases, there is some room to maneuver if you're still waiting on a few figures. So that's worth bearing in mind. And, once you've filed your return, you can actually tweak it online, I should say, anytime from 72 hours after you filed it until the 31st of January next year. So 2027. So yeah, a full 12 months really to make sure that it's 100% accurate.
There is, though, if you do make an amendment and it changes the amount of tax that you owe, so you owe more or you actually owe less, obviously you will have to, if you owe more, you will have to pay it. And then if you owe less, then HMRC will refund that back to you. And that's just sort of how it will go. So you can change it, but obviously it will affect the amount of tax. If it does affect the amount of tax that you pay, you'll have to deal with that as well.
The other thing to bear in mind too, when we were talking about, fines and penalties, is that there is help out there if you don't think you can pay the bill in full by the 31st of January. You can contact HMRC and ask for help spreading those payments with something called a time to pay arrangement. You can set up a plan on their website, and there's no standard time period. It's something you can liaise with the tax office about, and so your payments and time period basically can be decided based on your own needs. There's also a budget payment plan that you can make towards your next tax bill, because that's what you don't want is this having to you want to make sure you're not caught out next year as well. So, and that way you can make sort of weekly or monthly direct debit payments towards your next tax bill as well. So that means you're going to have less to pay by next year's deadline. So there's all sorts of ways you can manage the bill in future.
Speaking of the future then, should we give some quick tips on kind of how to make it easier for people the next time they come to do their tax return? Me, not as a money journalist, my bit of advice is just to get it done nice and early so that you don't have the pressure of waiting till the deadline or not getting sick of those constant reminders from HMRC telling you have to do it. So that's my bit of advice. But for some more professional advice from you two money journalists, what would you say to make it easier for people in the future?
I wouldn't even call mine professional, but this is the only piece of advice I'll give people is to just get organized, which sounds really dull and boring. But there's so many caveats and so many bits and bobs you need to put into your tax return. Just get a folder, make a color-coded email folder or get the actual physical folders to put in letters or invoices, receipts. And if you have them there, ideally you want to like bake them and all that. That's like going a little bit too far. But like if you want to just basically like have a folder of receipts, have a folder of invoices, have an email folder of work that you've been commissioned to do, and then like what I would do is then have like one day a month where you just go, I'm gonna just have a look, see what I've done. Something like that. If you go into your self-assessment, that tax return, just kind of having an idea of what you've done throughout the year and the work you've done, the money you've earned, you can get it done, not easily, more like easier, but it's a little simpler. You're like, okay, at least I know. But if everything's a bit chaotic, like I've said, I'm sat on my brother's floor just holding scrumpled receipts, tears. I'm like, what do I do with these? And it's like, put them in a folder, babe. That would have been so much easier.
Shall we talk about something that's coming down the road this year, which is making tax digital? And I feel like this is going to have a big impact on sole traders and landlords as well. Ruby, what is making tax digital? It's brand new, isn't it?
The most exciting thing to happen to the tax system forever. It's been like murmuring on the surface for ages now, but it's digitalising the tax system as a whole. And HMRC have been working on it for ages. They introduced MTD for VAT, which is make tax digital for VAT for businesses a few years ago now. I think it was maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Dates escape me. But the new one that's coming in April this year, so the new tax year, is making tax digital for income tax. And specifically, it's going to hit sole traders and landlords earning £50,000 a year. And it's going to be brought in stages. So in 2027, it's going to be sole traders and landlords earning over 30k. And then 2028, it's going to be those earning over 20. And all it means is that you're going to, instead of doing file a single return at the end of the year, you file quarterly returns digitally, and then you pay your tax bill at the end of the not the end of the tax year, sorry, at the January self-assessment. That's the change. If you don't have to file it all at once, you file it across each quarter. So every 3 months. And you have to do that through a HMRC software, and you kind of got to do it. They're really pushing to get it digitalized. It's set to make things a little bit easier, so you can file, that receipt that you've got in the folder, you can file it then. So it's quite big because it will affect quite a number of people. So this year it's sole traders and landlords, which are going to have to make some changes. So it's quite exciting, really, but you've got to be ready for it. If you've got an accountant, they'll be on it with you. They'll be telling you how to do it, and most likely have the systems already in place for you. But if you're on your own and you're doing all your taxes by yourself, you should really have a gander now at what you should be doing, so you're ready for when the new tax year starts in April, because it will start and you will have to do it. And if you don't, there are some sort of instances where you don't there are HMRC will allow you to still file through paper, or it has to be, like I said, a decent reason. So this is I think religious reasons, inability to art with technology and things like that. So you can still file on paper, but you've got to tell HMRC about it and get that sort of in place beforehand.
Did you mention it's being phased in as well? So more people are going to come in next year as well. Yeah. So and it's, they're doing it at the moment, they're doing it by how much you're earning. So as Ruby mentioned, self-employed, sole traders, landlords, from this April, if they earn over £50,000, but from next April, so from 2027, it's going to be 30,000 to 50,000 and 50,000. So basically that's going to affect a further 970,000 people. And then from the following April, then it's going to be just everyone basically. So the threshold for MTD will just decrease to £20,000. Well, sorry, it won't be everyone, but it will be bringing significantly more taxpayers into the scheme. So it's just being rolled out in stages, but eventually, most self-employed individuals or landlords are going to be brought into this scheme and have to use it for all income tax.
And Matthew, you've covered tax for a little while now, and sort of the intricacies of how self-assessment works. This is obviously a huge change. Do you think it'll take people long to adjust to it? Do you think in the long run it'll make things easier for a lot of people?
I mean, it is a big adjustment, but I mean, I suppose it could help in terms of helping people to budget better rather than waiting a whole year and then getting caught out in January, realizing you didn't actually budget for that tax bill. Because it can take a lot of people by surprise. I think it definitely, when I was freelancing, it took me by surprise too. And I didn't really budget. Luckily I could pay the bill. But suddenly you've got this surprise. Oh my God, I didn't actually earn that much after all, because of, this chunk of it has to now go to the HMRC, and also in my case, because I was a sole trader, I also had to pay something called payments on account, they're like advance payments that you have to pay towards the next tax bill in end of January, at the same time as your main bill, and then another chunk goes out in July. So I think this might help people budget. And that's obviously a good thing, but I think it's going to be an adjustment for a lot of people. Yeah, Ruby, what do you think? Do you think it's going to make life easier for freelancers, or more of a nightmare?
I think it'll make it easier, just simply because, do you know, when it's like, when you've got something, like I said, it's just the filing of it. So I think that's the thing that people get quite stressed about, is everything that you've got to do all at once. So instead of doing it all at once, you just spread it out. So it's in smaller chunks. So like I say, it's every quarter, starting in April. So every 3 months you file a tax return, and it's done digitally as well. So everything, so this is like physical receipts, all this stuff, you digitalize them, or you get like an email invoice, you just whack them all in and then file it that way. So doing it bit by bit feels a little bit more like you can keep on top of stuff a little bit better. Sort of like any smaller jobs you've done, or any smaller expenses that you may forget to have claimed in January. You do it bit by bit. So the tax bill you have to pay is still by January 31st. So the tax you pay for the previous tax year is still January 31st. It's just the filing stuff. And that's the faffy part about it. It's all the paperwork around it. Paying the bill, a lot of people are like, right, okay, I've got to pay a tax bill eventually, so they'll put some money aside, and then it's figuring out how much you pay during that period of January. But if you can just keep on top of it, you probably will be a little bit more like, oh, okay, so it's round about this much now, then this much now. So I think it's going to be easier, but that's me talking as like quite a scatty person who I wouldn't call myself organised at all. So I have like post-it notes around my flat, around my desk, to remind me to do stuff. So I think it will be easier just because it's smaller chunks rather than one big job at the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And as I was saying, that's definitely going to help you budget. Surely, you're going to know the bills, what you actually get. Because when I was a freelance journalist, I was paid article, by article really, and or project, and yeah, I never took a fee and thought, oh well, 20% of that is going to the tax man. You don't. Well, I didn't anyway. I was a bit scatty like you, Ruth.
So the whole payment is in my account.
No,
that's it. I'm like, great, I've been paid.
Exactly. It's a night out, but then yeah, exactly. But then I think if you're doing it every quarter, you're going to have more of a sense of what you need to pay. By the end of January, and you're less likely to get caught out or stung.
And can I clarify something as well? Because we say making tax digital, which is the name of the scheme. And when I hear the word digital, I immediately think everything has to be online. So does that mean that there'll be no more 20-year-old rubies who are crying on a bed with their brother with all the receipts? Or are you still going to be able to keep physical documents, or how does that work?
Physical documents are still important, because obviously, like, we know, like, if you have everything, can you imagine, like, I've got everything on my laptop, I drop my laptop, breaks the whole thing. I'm like, yeah. So it's important, again, like, under like the rules, HMRC say you should keep documentation for like 4 years. So keeping documents, physical documents themselves, is still important. That I wouldn't completely eradicate them, but because as well, like, coming up as it's phased in, it's only going down to £20,000 now. So if you're not earning £20,000 a year, you don't have to use the digital software, the MTD software. So if you're earning £15,000 through freelance work, you'll still have to declare that through paper. Whether that's going to change and whether that's going to be eventually brought in with everyone over the personal allowance. But for now, paper is still important. Keep your invoices if they're sent to you. Keep letters and things, just because having a backup's just sensible. There will always be someone out there who is like 20-year-old Ruby crying over receipts. There will be. Paper is not being eradicated completely. Like, it's still something that you should do. Keep receipts, keep them in folders. And yeah, like, it's not going to cover everyone over the next 3 years of the phase-in. So yeah, paper is still a part of it. So don't be like, oh, it all has to be online, or it all has to be through my emails. No, keep your papers, it's fine. It's always nice to have a backup.
It is indeed. Can we do just one thing on your tax code? Because I imagine this doesn't just apply to people who have to do self-assessment, but also for people who are employed by a company and on PAYE. I guess there's a huge importance for people to be checking that. And I guess this time of year might be the right time to do that as well. Would you say, Ruby?
Yeah, probably sort of like around the self-assessment deadline, start of the new tax year. If you pick up seasonal work, you should be checking, or if you move jobs, you should be checking your tax code. Not like every month, Christ, but like regularly, because it's down to you yourself to be on the right tax code. And it's not your employer, it's not HMRC, they don't go around checking, like, oh, it's you yourself. And I've had an issue where I've been on the wrong tax code, and thankfully I was due money back because I was paying too much tax. But at that time, I had no idea. I was freelancing, I was working hospitality jobs, I had 2 coffee shop jobs, and then I left one, and my tax code still had me working these 2 jobs for PAYE, and then obviously my freelance stuff, which was separate. But yeah, it was like a few months, and I got a few hundred back, which was quite nice. And it was only because someone at work mentioned it, because I said, I'm paying a mad amount of tax here. This is ridiculous. And they were taxing me on having 2 incomes when I shouldn't have just been taxed on the one. So I got some money back, which was nice. But that sort of taught me a little bit like, oh, you sure? What's this? What's the tax code? Her early 20s, Ruby was not well versed in tax or anything. So it's hilarious where I am now. But yeah, keep you regularly check it just to make sure it's fine. Just make sure you're not paying too much. And if you're paying too little, you will have to pay it. No matter what the reason is. You paid too little, you have to pay it. And again, you'll be able to do like times pay arrangements, all those sort of bits. But yeah, it's worth just keeping an eye on it. Every so often, give it a gander and be like, yeah, that's right. Okay, cool beans. And then carry on. Then if you notice a change, you can see if it's the reason why, moving jobs, picking up an extra one, all that stuff. But it's just important to keep an eye on it, really.
Yeah, there's 2 letters you can get from HMRC. One says, you have paid too much tax and we owe you some, which is a lovely letter to receive. Or the one that I got about a week before Christmas that said, you have paid too little tax and you owe us, hundreds of pounds potentially. So it's worth keeping on track and, making sure it's right. Matthew, the usual one for most people, the tax code, I've put myself on the spot. 1257L. Is that the usual one for most people?
Yes. I am looking at it now, so I'm checking. Yes, it is 1257L. That's right. But it might differ depending on where you live, the level of your personal allowance you're entitled to, and also the rate of tax you need to pay. And you can find that on your P60 or P45, your pay slip. You should be able to see it there. But yeah, I mean, if anything changes, as Ruby said, you need to inform HMRC and just check that it's right. Because you could be paying too much or too little even.
One of the things, very important. It is on you to make sure that is correct. So, as Ruby and Matthew say, do double check. We've covered off loads today about self-assessment. I feel like 20-year-old Ruby would be very proud of current day Ruby of all the advice you've given out.
I wish I could genuinely go back and give her a hug. She really needed it. She went through the trenches. Me and HMRC have had like a turbulent relationship throughout my 20s. But yeah, early 20s Ruby, God, she needed this podcast. She needed me now to tell her what was going on.
Well, hopefully there's plenty of 20-year-old Rubies listening right now. Or if you are listening and you have a 20-year-old Ruby in your life, let them know about this, and hopefully that can help them as the deadline approaches. But that's it for today. Ruby, thanks very much for coming on your debut. Well done. Thank you. And Matthew Jenkin as well, Savings Journalist of the Year still. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I'm not tax journalist though. Who knows?
We'll wait and see. That brings to an end another podcast from Which. There's loads more for you to read about everything we discussed today. Just head to the episode description for more useful everyday advice. There you'll also find an exclusive offer for podcast listeners like you to become a Which member for 50% off the usual price, giving you access to our product reviews, our app, one-to-one personalised buying advice, and every issue of Which magazine across the year. Plus, your membership helps us to make life simpler, fairer and safer for everyone. If you'd like to know when we release a new episode, then make sure you press subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you can be one of the first to listen. And for any questions, comments or anything in between, follow us on social media at WhitchUK or email us podcast@which.co.uk. Goodbye.
They expect you to stay quiet, to swallow hidden fees, put up with faulty products, and accept poor service as just the way it is. But you can demand better. Stand up, speak up, because with Which on your side, you can say no to bad business, buy with confidence, and get the service you deserve. Which, the power in you. Find out more at which.co.uk.